What is up, you guys? Welcome to another edition of The Game Changer. I'm indeed the man who just recently found out that character-wise, Bradley Cooper has been having a really rough year. I'm Nate the Effing Great, and I'm being joined here by my lovely co-host who is having a hard time with a knot in her necklace. Damn you manufacturers for making jewelry so complicated sometimes. VicTori Belle, good morning from Chicago.
Good morning. Yeah, Chicago was crazy last night. A lot of haunts and tricks and treats. And I'm feeling it this morning. And now my necklace is a knot. It's just not my day.
Well, you were mentioning before the show that you were going to a birthday party as well as a Halloween party. Did you dress up by chance? And who were you dressed up as?
I did. I dressed up. Instagram people probably saw I was the Beauty and Beast combo. So I was Belle turning into the Beast.
Oh.
But very lower grade than what I, costume years wanted to do. But it was more of a sexy, fun costume than a craftsmanship costume.
Okay, cool. And for those of you that saw me on Facebook, I was dressed up, of course, as Freddy Krueger. But on Saturday, I also dressed up as Chris Jericho, who also retweeted my costume on Twitter. Thank you so much. Shout out to you, Chris Jericho. Hopefully the cruise was absolutely amazing. The Cruise of Jericho, sail away, man. And I know a lot of people that have gone on that cruise. You guys are lucky turds, and I'm jealous of you. But at the same time, I can only do so much with so much of the time that I'm given. But anyway, we're not here to talk about rants and raves and stuff like that. We're actually here to talk about a very cool network that definitely deserves to be talked about. We've been talking about this for months. We've talked about Disney, we've talked about Cartoon Network, and now we are here at, honestly, probably the most rivaled network, I would say, compared to Disney, and that being Nickelodeon. Of course, a lot of people know so many of the fantastic, wonderful, and absolutely amazing cartoons and TV shows that came out of it. Honestly, it's one of those networks that finds a way to just work well with all ages. I mean, I remember them doing, of course, Nick Jr. in the mornings. Afternoons would be the Nickelodeon regular programs. Night times would be, of course, Nick at Night, where they would have reruns of shows like, George Lopez, The Nanny. I believe Full House was involved as well. A lot of these, classic reruns that were probably on other shows and other networks and syndication. Mainly Nickelodeon was for syndication for most of it, but hey, at least it got an audience. But we're here to talk about the foundation of what Nickelodeon was, and that was indeed a lot of the stuff that happened during the daytime as well as the afternoon time. I guess you could say the Nick-Toons, the Nickelodeon. Yes, that's the last time I will be doing that. But with that,
I feel like you had to do a slime at the end of
that. Oh, trust me, we'll be talking a lot about slime. I mean, honestly, they host their own award show, the Kids' Choice Awards, which has to do with a lot of slime anyway. So, but yeah, let's just dive right into it. Just going to go through almost like a majority of the lineups that have indeed taken over and really stand out as far as the Nickelodeon goes. Now, just remember, guys, that, hey, success, the knot is gone.
I got my knot out!
Just that, I just see your face just glowing with just absolute... Just cue the hallelujah music right there.
I need no man. I got my own knots out.
Oh, man. So literally there's going to be a Facebook post that's just going to say, VicTori Belle is no longer single, married to self. Oh,
no one would be surprised.
Oh, man. That's going to be an interesting day for... And it's going to be a cry out for so many men saying, no, I thought I had a chance. Like, nope, I've known her long enough to know she's a strong, independent woman. She's literally going to be Wonder Woman in live action real life, dude. Just going to say that. Anyway, back to Nickelodeon. It's going to be interesting. So obviously there's a lot of these shows that we're probably going to miss, and a lot of people are probably going to get mad, but hey, we're doing as much as we can. We actually have 15 shows that we're going to be talking about, and I know we only have so much time to discuss it, but We're going to do what we can, so just bear with us. And if we missed out on your show, leave it in the comment in the section below. Let us know which one that we missed, and we'll maybe do like a small apology next week. A very tiny one, like probably 30 seconds worth. Either way, let's kick it off. I mean, honestly, half of my list is probably cartoons, and the other half is actually the live-action TV shows, what people call them. I usually call them like sitcoms or stuff like that. But starting off this list with a bit of a interesting show. I mean, you could honestly say it's an odd show, but it's the Fairly Odd Parents. Of course, honestly, you listen to the beginning song. It's easy to pick up what basically happens. Timmy is an average kid that no one understands. Mom and Dad and Vicky always giving him commands. Doom and gloom up in his room. Oh, broken history, but his magic little fish with every great as every wish. In reality, they are his odd parents, fairy odd parents. So Timmy Turner goes on these wild adventures with his fairy godparents, Wanda and Cosmo. They grant his every wish. Of course, they have to follow a rule book, and there's a lot of array of great characters involved in this. From Timmy's mom and dad to Vicky, the evil babysitter, who somehow has this wide range of like torture apparatuses and just crazy things to just torture kids with. I'm thinking, my God, how could she afford it? Oh wait, the parents have apparently boatloads of money, even though they live in like these smaller like houses. I'm like, how are they even able to afford a babysitter that much? Okay, whatever. Why do I question it?
Why are you questioning a cartoon that's drawn like a comic?
Fair enough. That is fair. A lot of, Timmy's friends like Chester and AJ, Dr. Crocker, who is legitimately probably one of the funniest villains you'll see in Nickelodeon, and even some of the fairies that get involved. The main one, of course, being Jorgen von Strangle, toughest fairy in the universe, who fears nothing. Literally an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonator, but in some of the most comedic, best ways possible. And when you see him get scared, it makes it even that much funnier. It's just a really good show where they just battle up against, evildoers, or Timmy just finds a way to get himself in trouble. It's just a very well done show. Honestly, I really enjoy where it comes. Basically, the way I see it, first few seasons were pretty good. When they got into some of the live-action movies, it was kind of like, okay, this is okay. I mean, you got Drake Bell playing Timmy as a 23-year-old. I guess that works. Then they, of course, got the second one. There's 3 live-action movies about the Fairly Odd Parents.
What?
I kid you not. It is insane what they go through. Basically, like the first one, Cosmo and Wanda realize that, Timmy will basically lose them if he falls in love with Tootie, who is played by a prettier girl, not the, I guess, quote-unquote, creepier, smaller girl that they had in the cartoon. It's bizarre. The second one's like a Saving Christmas deal, and the third one is one of those things where I watch it and I'm like, I'm completely lost, and at the end I'm just like, I hate everything. It's one of those things where I'm just like, you had so much good stuff here, and then you just threw it all away. And then I guess later on in seasons they added new characters, which made people lose even more. So it's like you had a time to stop. And there's a couple shows on here where they realized, they peaked, so they stopped. It feels like Fairly Odd Parents is definitely one of those shows where it's just like, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep the momentum going. We're going to keep going. Oh, what can we think of here? Oh, well, this is not seeming to work. Let's add this person. Let's add another person. Let's do blah, 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 blah. It's like, it doesn't always have to do that. I mean, so many seasons, like I said, you've done your job. Just kind of move on from it. But I don't know. I still enjoyed it for the long run. Majority of the seasons were pretty good. A lot of really good episodes. They even had a couple of musicals, which was really good. But yeah, I don't know. Your thoughts on Fairly Odd Parents?
Love it. Love that you picked that. There's just so many. I'm just such a Nickelodeon girl. Like I said about the Cartoon Network one, I was kind of like about a lot of the cartoons that we picked, just because I'm just not that big of a fan. Period. But I just looking up Nickelodeon cartoons. Every one that pops up, I'm just like, oh, I love that show. Oh, I love that show. Oh my gosh, I love that show. So, I'm excited. I also missed one that I feel like I needed to put on there because I've talked about it a lot before.
Okay.
So just throwing it out there that I did add an extra one.
That's fine. So I think how we had it was that I was going to do 2 quick and then you'll do 1. So I'll end my first set here on a show that actually started off very interestingly. So basically, it started off as like these little cartoon shorts, and then they decided to make it into a movie, which was good, and they decided, you know what, let's make it a TV series, which I thought, okay, this is actually kind of good. Some of the really good characters, villains-wise, and told some very interesting stories, and they even had a nice little, what did they call it, a power hour with the Fairly Odd Parents. I'm, of course, talking about Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. My God, I loved this TV show. I loved Jimmy Neutron just being the all brainy kid and would just try to create these new inventions to make life better. He had basically these normal friends in Carl and Sheen. Carl just being like the most pudgy, but also kind of like the most, I'm trying to think of like the best way to put it. He's basically like a pacifist. He doesn't believe in fighting. He doesn't believe in doing crazy stuff like that. And it seems like everything he does, it affects him physically. So it's almost like, well, is there like anything you could do that doesn't involve you getting hurt? And it's kind of like, no. Okay, well, he's still a good person. And then, of course, you have Sheen, who's just like this hyperactive kid that I think everybody could almost relate to. He would just always be, eating candy, drinking soda, playing with action figures, Ultra Lord, which I looked at, I thought to myself, wow, this is kind of like me when I was a kid. I was always into those action figure deals, having this crazy imagination. Jimmy has his dog Goddard. He's got to deal with everybody that has a school, including I think it was Cindy and Libby. That's right, 2 girls. And there's always this weird connection between Cindy and Jimmy. Like it's almost like a forbidden.
She loves him.
Yeah, it's really interesting how they kind of worked off of that. But then, of course, you had some of the other characters like, Jimmy's parents and, some of the other parents, and then the guy at the ice cream shop. And then, honestly, I cannot forget this guy. I mean, Professor Calamitous, played by the one and only, let me guess, Tim Curry. You're damn right, Tim Curry! God help me. Tim Curry is one of those guys, I just think to myself, he is my childhood. He's everything. Please, for the love of God, give him some kind of Oscar. Give him something. Again, he's just basically like this little bald professor who's just trying to take over the world. At first, he's just not able to complete anything, and that was kind of like the running joke for a while. But then during a James Bond-like movie that they created, he basically says he took a lot of like self-help therapy, shock therapy to basically help him through. So he's speaking in like complete sentences, getting his plans together. And I'm just like, oh, so he basically went from being this kind of stuttering, can't think of all of his thoughts dude to now being able to complete stuff. And then there comes a point where he's just like, I haven't really thought that part through. I'm like, oh, you haven't thought of that. Okay, so you failed something. No, I just skipped a session. It's like, oh, you skipped a session of therapy. Way to go. But it's still Tim Curry, damn it. It's amazing. I absolutely loved it. I think it was a really good series, and I know that they tried to do like a spin-off series where it was only about Sheen, but it just didn't have that same effect. Jimmy Neutron was always the best. You tried to feel smarter watching it, and there's always a part of you that was just like, you kind of wanted to be a part of that crew.
Oh yeah, no, Jimmy Neutron was great. I really liked it. It was funny. It was clever. And I always enjoyed the, like, consistent, like, think, and then you'd go into his brain and see all the the electrons, like, firing in his brain, and it was just really cool, really fun. And I do remember the crossover with Fairly Odd Parents because, like, the different, like, look and Timmy and everything is like, whoa, I'm here in a new dimension or something.
It's kind of crazy because I remember them basically just calling that out where, of course, Timmy is just like, why does everything look so bulgy? And then he's just like, who cares? But then as soon as Jimmy goes into Fairly Odd Parents world, I guess we'll call it, basically he's just talking about, he's like, my arms, my hands. And he even talks about his depth where he looks like a cardboard piece. I'm like, This is like Deadpool breaking fourth wall kind of stuff here. Are you kidding me? This is awesome.
It really is great. So I love another great one.
Well, I think I've taken up a bit of time, so why don't you tell us, what could you possibly have on your list that was possibly amazing in the world of Nickelodeon?
Like I said, there's so many. But I guess I'm going to start off with probably one of the most well-known Nickelodeon characters of all time, and that would be Mr. SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yay!
I think he is like the transcendent Nickelodeon character that everyone everywhere knows. Like, even if you know nothing about Nickelodeon, you're like, oh yeah, I've heard of SpongeBob. And the Who Lives in a Pineapple Under the Sea.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
There you go. Yeah, it started, back in 1999, and it still is putting out new episodes to this date. There's actually a new one, or it says it's a new one, on this Sunday, 11/4, at 10 and 10:15, 2 new episodes, because you know how they only had 15-minute episodes all smashed together in a great little show. But yeah, everyone knows who SpongeBob is. SpongeBob lives in a pineapple with his snail Gary and Bikini Bottom, with neighbors Patrick Star and Squidward Tentacles. Patrick's a kind of doofy, lovable character, and Squidward is the cranky neighbor who speaks through his nose. And then he works as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab for Mr. Krabs, and sometimes they try to steal the formula. Mr. Plankton tries to steal the formula. And he also has a friend, Sandy, who is a squirrel that lives in an underwater dome. Like, what? Who created this?
It's kind of crazy, because as I was thinking to myself, looking at the SpongeBob SquarePants cartoon as a full, and this is kind of one of those things where I don't know why I got into like really deep thinking about this, and I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute, Squidward is kind of like representing like the norm of society, where you notice a lot of people hate on him, they think that he's not that good. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, well, obviously he's kind of like something that blends in with the crowd, and I guess nobody really wants that. I mean, with SpongeBob, he tries to be extraordinary. Patrick kind of represents kind of the idiocracy that comes in the world. Obviously, Mr. Krabs represents the greed. Plankton represents the evil. There's just so much of it where I'm just like, I'm thinking way too deep into this cartoon, but at the same time, why does it sadly make sense that this all works together? It's really bizarre, but
it's interesting. It's definitely they definitely put it together with different ideas than just there's a fake sponge and a starfish that like to hang out. Like, they definitely have underlining themes that I don't like to look into, because it's just SpongeBob for me. Like, I don't want it to be more than SpongeBob. But I do want to give a shout out to the voice actor of SpongeBob, Tom Kenny, who is amazing, and he's gone to a bunch of Comic-Cons. He's been traveling Comic-Cons this past year and years before, but I do feel he's a little more prevalent now. People are really excited. Obviously, he's done a lot more things than just SpongeBob, but he just has so many voices in SpongeBob that you're kind of like he was one of those original voice actors that took on like 5 different roles. Like, he was Gary, he's the French narrator, he's a bunch of different things along the lines of SpongeBob, and I think people don't even realize, like, that's one voice throughout that whole time. And they're like, yep, that's just SpongeBob's voice doing a bunch of different things. It's
really amazing how we really kind of do take for granted a lot of the voice actors that have, that we kind of met. You mentioned Tom. I could talk, Jim Cummings is definitely another one that I could name who has played like so many different roles. Honestly, like I said, I didn't know Tim Curry played a lot of voice acting roles, but it's one of those things where it's like, this is pretty awesome. The list can go on, but basically, whenever you meet a voice actor, appreciate them, because they could be one of your next favorite characters you ever meet. So shout out to you, Tom. do absolutely amazing, and keep up the amazing work with SpongeBob. Yeah, honestly, SpongeBob is an enjoyable show, and the fact that they've made, I think, 2, maybe 3 movies, I would say.
There's a live action thing too, which I don't follow the movies as well as I followed the shows. I'm not of the age anymore to really follow those movies, but they were good. I remember like the Mermaid King one and stuff like that. They were definitely really entertaining, and I think that's where what SpongeBob was all about, is goofy, stupid fun.
That's probably the best way to put it. All right, so speaking of goofy, stupid fun, I think that's a perfect transition into one of the next ones that I have on here is Rocko's Modern Life. Quite possibly one of the more, honestly, a dark horse when it comes to it. It basically is talking about I'm trying to remember. Is he like a marsupial? Is he kind of like a kangaroo? What exactly is Rocko? I'm trying to remember exactly.
I think he is definitely a marsupial. I don't think he's a kangaroo. Is he a kangaroo?
I don't know, but basically
either a kangaroo or I think he's a wallaby actually, or something. Like I remember they say wallaby or something like that. He's like the smaller version of a kangaroo.
Yeah, I think you might be right. So basically, you have Rocko basically trying to live his life, and of course, all the other characters in this are indeed animals. I mean, you basically has next door neighbors that are frogs. He has a best friend who is basically a bull. A lot of these crazy characters, but honestly, a lot of stuff that they do is actually pretty good. I think I can pick out one episode that I remember the most was I think that Rocko was having, I don't know if it was maybe like a liver problem or a kidney problem or something like that. But yeah, he goes on this adventure with this organ in his body, and then they take it out of his body, and he basically gives it like a funeral. And it's kind of one of those things where it's bizarre, but it's one of those things where it's like it's the kind of unique, bizarre creativity that some people would appreciate. And Rocko's Modern Life, I think, is definitely one of those shows that a lot of people appreciate because it is funny when you get a chance to watch it, but it also has those kind of underlining themes where you're just like, wow, this kind of hits in pretty well.
Oh yeah, I definitely enjoyed Rocko's Modern Life. I think that there's like an age of like where all cartoons were kind of trying to do the same thing, and I do think Rocko kind of mixed a lot in with some of those like odder kind of gross Cartoon Network shows when they were coming out. I forget what they're called even because I did not like Ren and Stimpy, but isn't that on Nickelodeon?
Ren and Stimpy, yeah.
Isn't that on Nickelodeon though?
Yes, he is. Yes, they are.
That's no one. I don't know if you're going to name that one, but that one was too gross for me too. Rocko's Modern Life wasn't as graphic because they didn't draw the way Ren and Stimpy or whatever did. You know how they like got really realistic at some points, and you're like, why did they do that?
Right.
Like, that's f***ing gross. So it wasn't one of my favorites, Rocko's Modern Life, but I did enjoy it. And yeah, that's what I'll say about that. It's not one of my favorites, but I enjoyed it.
No, definitely. It's not one of my favorites either, but it's definitely one that I do think stands out when people talk about Nickelodeon. Another one that is actually probably one of my favorites. I wish I watched more. I should watch more of this show, but anytime that I talk about Nickelodeon, this name definitely comes up. The show Invader Zim. Honestly,
oh my God.
I mean, basically, it's just a kid alien who's trying to take over the Earth, but he's basically being thwarted by this other kid who's almost like about his age. In the first episode, you basically get to see like the warped mind that Zim has of him basically just taking over, even like his home planet, just basically trying to be a ruler of everything. He only cares for himself. He basically has his home is a spaceship, and the only company that he has is a little robot that is completely messed up in the head called Gurr. Oh my gosh.
Gurr was the best. He was my favorite character. Hashtag Looker.
He's legitimately one of those characters that just it's kind of like a Pinky and it's like the Pinky and the Brain dynamic there, where you have Zim is literally trying to take over the world. He's the brains behind everything. And you just have Gur, who's just trying to have fun and basically introduce Zim to all these new things. I remember there's like one episode dedicated to Zim being introduced to I think it was it was waffles. That's right. Gur just keeps making waffles, and Zim's just like, all right, fine, I'll eat one more waffle. And he's just getting more and more obsessed with just eating these waffles. And it's just so hilarious how they just keep this going. It's like, how do you keep this kind of subject matter going, but yet it's somehow so entertaining? Oh, it's because Gur, and he's amazing. Fair enough. But there's also a lot of other episodes, like I think I remember Zim was going into his rival's body basically to find information or something like that, and basically it ends with the rival finding Zim not necessarily in this context, but basically it is liar, because he basically just says, like, I got one more thing to do, and Zim's just like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? Next thing you know, you hear just like this flush, and the screen just starts spinning, and people are just like, oh, he got flushed on the toilet. It's like, yep, he did, and that is actually kind of funny. So it adds a little bit of a dark humor to it, but it also has kind of like an identity of its own that makes it a very entertaining show. Did I learn anything from it? Don't shrink yourself into somebody's body, otherwise you might end up being peed out, I guess. And that and waffles are amazing. Hashtag Team Waffles Forever.
I forgot about Invader Zim just because it was so short-lived because of how, like, kind of too adult it was. Like, I remember, and I'm talking about gross shows. I was talking about gross shows, and I was okay with Invader Zim probably because of the animation style was just so fun. Like the giant heads and stuff, but they did a lot of, like, removal. I remember the organ episode where, whatever the boy was, like, saying, like, Zim's not a human, he doesn't have organs. So Zim goes around and stealing everyone's organs and putting them in his body until he's like a giant organ. He's like, I have the most organs of all! I will rule the world! And like, everyone's organs are missing. It's just like this guy is just such an intense character who doesn't understand anything in our world, and that's, I think, what made it so.
Yeah, I mean, it's so good. Yeah, definitely. Well, there's a reason why it only lasted for so long. It was only 2 seasons and 27 episodes. That is, like, not even close to, like, Walking Dead worthy, but at the same time, it still makes that kind of an impact on you. In those 27 episodes, people still found enough, enough reason to remember it. So it definitely does stand out. It's amazing. So if you ever get a chance, you guys go check out Invader Zim. It's amazing. I've said amazing twice, but I'll say it again. Invader Zim is amazing. Invader Zim is amazing. Okay, I had one more left in me, but anyway. So now with this, great alignment, there's got to be another one out there that just really stands out as far as, Nickelodeon goes. What you got?
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick on the, like, grosser older side, and I say grosser older, but I loved Cat Dog. I love the world with a little cat dog, It's about conjoined siblings, which I don't know how it happened, but one's a cat and one's a dog. They always have to deal with unique challenges of being stuck together as just a double-headed, no-anus creature. Cat is more of the clever one, and dog is more of the lovable one. Kind of goes with the theme of one's a cat, one's a dog, and they always have to, like, have constant ridicule. Grease their dogs, which were the bullies and stuff, and they just go on a ton of adventures, and it's just really intriguing because of the fact that they are connected in all of it.
Yeah, it's just one of those shows that, again, it stands out for the uniqueness of it. Because, like you said, it's just basically half of a dog and half of a cat put together. And, yeah, there's no anus involved, no genitalia whatsoever. And you just look at this, and some people are just thinking, like, well, how do they go to the bathroom? But then there's just other people that are just like, I'm not even going to question that. And it just gets to, like, kind of like a deeper a bond between the two of them. Because they're conjoined for so long. I remember, I think their only movie that they made, I think this was kind of like the end of Cat Dog, maybe, was the scene where was the movie where they basically try to find who their parents are, and it's kind of one of those interesting deals because you basically find out that the parents are, I think it was like a Sasquatch and a frog or something like that. So it's just one of those things where it kind of raises questions and kind of scratches its head, but it's still one of those things where it's like, hey, at least they have parents. That's what matters. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a good one. It came out in 1998, so it's been a while. But it was really, it was just fun, and they had a lot of adventures, and I remember a bunch of it, and if I remember a theme song so well, I feel like I really, really enjoyed it, and would, just keep sitting there while all these different shows popped up on your screen. So, and I would watch it.
Hey, fair enough. So, question for you, VicTori Belle. Are you afraid of the dark? Because that's the next show. So, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a transition from the cartoons, and I'm talking about some of the live-action sitcoms, TV shows that they had, and one of them that actually stood out, especially to me, was the show Are You Afraid of the Dark? Literally is basically what you would imagine it to be. A bunch of kids are basically huddled up together. I'm trying to remember what they were. I think they were like the Midnight Club was what they called themselves, or the Midnight Gallery, something like that. It was one of those names where I thought, okay, that's actually a really cool name to have. And basically what they do is that they just, huddle around a fire, tell each other just these scary stories. And they create those stories into these, roughly about maybe 30-minute, 15-minute stories, and it does a fantastic job. There's some that are kind of dumb, but then there's some that are like legitimately creepy. Some have a happy ending to it. Others don't exactly have a happy ending to it. I remember there's one episode where there was like this creature that was in a pool, and there was a point where I was like, yeah, I'm not swimming in no pool. No. So it was kind of like, it had that kind of Jaws feeling that you just see it and you think to yourself, well, I'm not going in a nice, bay of water. I don't care how safe people say it is. It just is one of those series where it's unique, it's creepy, but it does a fantastic job of creating, I guess, for a lot of little kids, fear. And one of the first few things that it says is that, this is a Y7 series. So it's like, okay, so if you're younger than 7, you definitely don't want to watch this. I think I remember still watching it at 6 years old, and I would always just watch it, wait for, and I kind of like, had my head across the door, kind of like, I'm watching it, making sure my parents don't come in, watching it. And yeah, you can imagine how well that scarred my childhood, because I still remember some of those stories where it's just literally so creepy what they come up with, but they do a fantastic job of it. So, yeah.
I mean, when you look at it now, obviously, I don't think it's creepy at all. But when you were young, yeah, it was creepy.
It just found a way, like I said, to prey on, some fears that kids had. And for me, apparently, it was pools, especially when they had no lighting in them. Because then you just you can only imagine what that was like. I need to go to my happy place. Happy place. What do we got? Okay. Well, this is definitely one of those things I could consider a happy place. So you guys have heard of a show called Saturday Night Live, right? Literally, probably one of the best comedy acts anytime during the weekends. Well, for us kids, we had a show called All That. It was legitimately one of the best comedy sketch, series that you could have. All the crazy stuff and all the crazy antics that these, kids came after, I think it lasted for quite a few years. It just found a way to, just really relate not only to kids at points, but it also found a way to relate to teenagers and even sometimes adults. It does a really great job of just connecting everything together. I remember a couple things here where they mocked did a Harry Potter parody where basically instead of a thunderbolt, I think it was like a chicken leg or something on his forehead. People know this one, Vital Information. That was one where basically this girl is just sitting at a desk and she's basically giving what she thinks is vital information that you should know. It's like she gives the vital information to one camera, then she turns to another camera, gives another piece of vital information, go to another, same thing. It also introduced us to two, honestly, comedic legends of our time, that being Kenan and Kel, who would eventually go on to have their own TV series, and unfortunately they're not on this list. I'm sorry. I wish I'd seen these guys, because from what I know, they sound like they are basically our generation's version of Key and Peele. It's very funny what they end up doing. I mean, of course, you see the Good Burger sketch, and there's literally even another sketch where they just have like the Osborne family just sitting around. They're reading stories. The kid who's playing Ozzy Osbourne, he's just reading a classic story like, the Three Bears or the Three Pigs, something like that. And it always ends up in like the Osbournes just fighting with each other, and it always ends the same way with Ozzy just saying, "And they all live happily ever after," the end. And they all just stop their bickering and just go back to sitting down in complete silence. It's so funny. And honestly, I would have put the Amanda Show on here, but the thing is that I thought that show was more pandering towards kids than more towards adults. Because as I got older, I realized that a lot of the stuff that they did there on the Amanda Show, it doesn't really last that long. It doesn't really, what's the phrase I'm looking for? It doesn't hold up.
Okay, I'm like,
No, Kid Next to the Kids, definitely. Especially kids that are definitely rebels. But it just doesn't hold up as well, as much as All That. I had to choose between the two of them. All That was the one that I had to choose. Honestly, probably my favorite.
All That. All That.
I mean, I think two of my favorite characters were the taxi cab driver who just literally yells at people just saying, "Kumquat! Jerk." He just says that, and then there's...
Was that Drake Bell? Is that one? Or no, it was Matt something, I remember. There was a lot of good Nickelodeon talent that came out of All That, and I don't know if this was Amanda Show or if it was All That, but the knock-knock jokes with the hillbillies.
That was Amanda Show. But trust me.
Knock-knock, who's there?
Liberty Bell Hill.
Through. I'm going to hit you in the head with a lobster. I'm like, oh my god. It's so stupid. Last member.
But it kind of has a charm to it. I get what you're meaning.
Yeah. Sorry, I think I was breaking up in and around there, but all good. I'm back.
Also, hashtag Skype hates us. So Skype, get your stuff together. All right, but I think I again continued on about that. So I believe that we are back in the cartoon realm. What other fantastic cartoon are we going to be talking about today?
Cool. I think I have to bring up one of the grooviest shows ever. Like Righteous Dude, Rocket Power, Hang Loose, Wiggity Wiggity Wiggity. Yeah, Rocket Power was an amazing show. It started in 1999. A lot of these are in 1999. I think that was my prime age when I got to start watching TV. But it's about a group of four friends. Let's see if I can name them. Otto, Reggie. Oh no!
I know one is Sam, and he's the computer tech.
Yeah, Sam. And then the nerd one. I'm forgetting the nerd one.
No, oh gosh, I'm gonna look it up too because now that's killing me right now. It's who the?
Oh no, Sam was the nerd one.
Yeah.
Sam was the nerd one. So then, what is the other cool? Twister.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm he's the cooler one too. But yeah, so four friends who love extreme sports in the California area and Ocean Shores, California. They excel at just about every, like, aggressive, like, skateboarding, surfing, all that stuff. And, you know, mountain biking. And they just kind of have adventures with them, like, trying to, like, one-up each other and stuff. With their surfing, like, single dad.
And, oh gosh, I want to know who the guy who owns the shack is, because he's like one of my...
Yeah, Tito.
Tito! Right? Oh my gosh, yeah. Tito was amazing. God, like the ancient Hawaiian saying, I'm like, oh gosh, that's awesome.
So great, so great. And it's just like one of those shows that everybody really liked because, like, I also think this was the time, like, there's a certain time in any, like, young child's life that they, like, believe that skateboarding is a thing they want to do. So this is the time that you, like, attempt it, and then you're like, oh my god, this was the worst idea ever. And now my skateboard is just, you know, in the back of the garage somewhere rotting away. But, like, I think there's always that time when you're like, I think I'm going to take up skateboarding. And then you're like, why doesn't it have handles? I don't like this.
You know, I think that if Goof Troop came out during this time, it probably would have, you know, connected more with the kids. But I think when it came out, probably like 1996 or something like that. Obviously, some people are just like, oh, what kind of you know, talk is this? But then you bring in Rocket Power, and, you know, it is, like you said, all about them doing, you know, skateboarding, stunts, and all that kind of stuff. It's really great. Again, they also had another great movie where they go to Australia, and they learn, like, you know, Australian slang. Tito's trying to find out where, you know, Vegemite is. It's one of those running jokes where it's like, okay, this is kind of funny. But then I realized what Vegemite is, and I'm like, oh, why? Just why? No, thank you. No. Tito, you keep all the Vegemite. If I get any Vegemite, I'm sending it your way. Just no. And no disrespect to anybody in Australia. I'm sorry, but I've heard things about Vegemite, so I think it's just kind of one of those things where it's like I might just take a pass on this one. Unless I lose and I have to do it for a punishment, then I'll have to do it. But right now it's like I have an option. I'm not doing it.
That's awesome, though. Yeah, it's just a great show. I loved it. So what's your next one?
All right. So these kind of tie in together because they do involve kind of one of the same characters in a way. And I wish that they would have done crossover here. Here, it was one of those things where it's like, oh, God, if they do a crossover deal here, that would be awesome. If they did like a switch with one of the characters, that'd be amazing. But I'll get into that in just a minute. First one up here is a classic sitcom that I found myself enjoying more and more every time in every episode, was the classic sitcom of Drake and Josh. The two guys that were probably the core comedy of the Amanda Show, whether they were doing the, you know, Tony Soprano deal or whether Drake was doing the Totally Kyle deal where he's just this surfer dude in his garage just talking about random things going on. He's just going like, well, you see, like, I wanted to do this thing, and, like, it didn't happen, so you know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is stupid, but somehow he fits that mold well. And Josh just plays that role of just the goofy, bumbling, stumbling kid very well, that having them be stepbrothers in a sitcom, it worked perfectly. They had perfect chemistry together. They worked very well. And the episodes just kept getting, you know, better and better from there. You kind of see the development of the relationship between the two of them. There's sometimes where they just, you know, can't stand each other. And there's sometimes where it's just kind of like, you know, we're brothers. We can't just, you know, forsake each other. It's just so very well done how they do that. And, of course, there's a lot of comedy. Mainly physical comedy by Josh Peck. God help me, Josh. You take such a abuse during the series, but you do such a fantastic job of taking every single bit of it. Because he's kind of like one of those guys who thinks, you know, if I do good works, then something good will come eventually. And it does. It just takes a lot longer than it probably should. I mean, a lot of the other characters involved in this, Mindy Crenshaw, who would be Josh's rival as far as brains go, but then she would turn out to be Josh's girlfriend, which I thought was a unique setup, but it was one of those things where I'm like, you know what, okay, I'm going with it. And then it's like, okay, now I can't think of these two being with anybody else. This is actually cool. And Drake would have his plethora of, you know, women, so it was kind of like a teenage version of Two and a Half Men, but no alcohol, no substance abuse and stuff like that. Come on, we all know that was true. And then you also had Miranda Cosgrove, who fit the role of Megan to a T. Absolutely very well done. I mean, if you saw her in School of Rock, you kind of knew what she was capable of. But I think one of my favorite characters of that one was a character by the name of Crazy Steve, because he would just randomly do absolutely insane things, and sometimes it was just for no reason whatsoever. I remember during one of the movies, he just comes out of a theater, he's got 2 bras in his hands, tied with shoes at the end, and he's just shaking them around. He's just going, cock-a-doodle-doo, and the cow says moo. And it's like, oh, okay, why is he doing this? Because you can't have him working on Mondays. Oh, well, I mean, it's Crazy Steve, so I guess, and then there's like an earlier joke earlier on where he basically has this thing with his therapist where he just says, well, I can only let out rage so many times during the day. Now is not the time. Because Josh, unfortunately, ate one of his enchiladas, so about like 2 minutes after that conversation, you just hear this alarm going, beep, 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 beep. He says, it's time. He just grabs a cane from an old man, and he just goes, you ate my enchiladas! He just goes crazy. I just loved that. And it translated very well into the other show, and that being iCarly, which, honestly, you guys, it's one of those shows that probably relates to the modern day so well. Because it all started with basically 2 friends just thinking, these kids are not getting recognized for their great talents. Let's do like a web series and, show them off. Then after that, they decided, okay, well, it seems like a lot of people like this. Let's just bring more comedy to our web series. And they do a lot of these crazy antics, like, trying to set world records, doing these crazy sketches every now and then. It's kind of one of those things where, again, it's crazy what they do, but it's almost so modern that you kind of forget that it is still a TV show. I mean, of course, you have Freddie, you have Sam, you have Carly. Crazy Steve makes his return, but this time as Carly's older brother, Spencer, who has some of the crazy antics, but he also shows a little bit more love and compassion in this time around, which it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I want there to be a realm where you just snap your fingers and he goes from Spencer to Steve, and then when he's in Steve, you just snap your finger again, or maybe just do like a clap or something, and he just goes right back to being Spencer. It's just one of those things where it's fine. And honestly, again, I would love if they would have done a crossover for this. It would have been awesome. Somehow Megan and Carly get switched around. It's the same person. It's one of those things where it writes itself. Maybe Carly figures out how to, be a better, quote-unquote, I guess, sibling to Spencer. Or maybe it's one of those situations where, Megan kind of messes around with Sam and with Freddie, that kind of deal. It's just one of those things where it's like, it seemingly writes itself. It's right there. Why not present it with it? Why not just go for it? It would have been awesome. But I think it's kind of one of those things where both Drake and Josh and iCarly, they're 2 good examples of knowing that, hey, we reached our peak. We're at a point right now where we've accomplished a lot. I think we can call it good. And there's still people asking for more episodes, but I can understand why they don't make them, because, one of the things I do like about Nickelodeon is the fact that they don't just, do this and then reboot it like 5 years later if they run out of ideas. They're thinking like, okay, we know what they like, but we have to make it something similar to that, but don't make it like exactly the same thing. So it's kind of cool seeing that. But I don't know. Your thoughts on those 2 shows?
Yeah, I honestly, I really liked both of those shows. I didn't watch iCarly as much. I think that was at a time when I was already kind of going away from it. But from what I did watch, I remember like the web series, and I thought maybe they were too young for me or something. I don't know. But Drake and Josh was more of my tune. Like, I really liked Drake and Josh. It does make me wonder, like, where are they now? I just looked up Drake Bell, and I was like, oh, he's, like, modeling and stuff. I know that he tried to have, like, a music career, too. Miranda Cosgrove also, like, did a stunt of a music career time. I do have some of her songs on my iPhone. But I think that maybe Josh has been in, like, Fuller House or something like that. Josh Peck.
He's done like sporadic movies every now and then. I know that I know that Will from Kings of the Ring podcast, shout out to you, Phil. Will, he definitely mentions that during the movie Drill Bit Taylor that Josh Peck is one of the bullies that's involved, and he says that's one of the reasons why he hates the movie. It's kind of one of those things where I watch it and I think, okay, I can understand where the hate is coming from, but at the same time, it gives Josh a little bit more of a different, background, a little bit of a different deal, and he kind of fits the role of a bully a bit, because a lot of people are definitely seeing him more as just, the comedic relief, and every now and then he can be the comedic relief during that movie, but he's just kind of like the sidekick, he's kind of the lackey, he's the support, which made sense. So, do I see him being like a evil villain anytime soon? Oh, God, no. But, I mean, from what I know, he's doing pretty well for himself. I think he recently just got married. I know there was a video about, I think like a friend of his brought Miranda to see him, I think for, I don't know if it was like a baby shower or something like that. But it was really cool. And there's like this weird kind of interaction deal between Drake and Josh where I think Drake wasn't invited to Josh's wedding or something like that, so he made a big deal. It's like, oh, the brotherhood is over and blah, blah, blah. And then they just made up eventually.
I saw that when I looked it up. There, something like he didn't even want to go to the wedding he wasn't invited to or something. It was weird. It seems weird and dramatic.
Not as weird as dramatic as Johnny Depp, but we're not here to bash Johnny. We're not here to bash Johnny. Not this episode. Maybe another episode.
Not this episode. But no, interesting. But yeah, two good choices. I will move on to my next cartoon choice because I just stuck with cartoons.
Yeah.
My kind of second to last, depending on what you say, and then also I wanted to throw in another one just to say it. I'll kind of speed it up. So, Wild Thornberrys. I loved the Wild Thornberrys. Eliza Thornberry having the ability to talk to animals. This was the best show ever for me. I was an animal nerd beyond animal nerd. I would be cultivating and saving animals all the time growing up. Your friend Tim Curry obviously is in this.
My boy, yeah.
But yeah, it's about a family of nature show parents, so a reality show within a show. So it was really cool, and as somebody who was obsessed with Steve Irwin growing up and Jeff Corbin, so all these nature shows that I watched constantly, this cartoon was just so much fun because it took not only the nature and facts of some of these cool animals, and then it brought it into fantasy about doing an adventure around them and being able to talk to them and see what they really want. And she goes all over the world with her parents who are nature enthusiasts and go track down animals for their TV show, just like what Steve Irwin did all the time. So I was in love with this show. This is probably almost my number one. I do have a number one, but this is almost my number one.
Well, I think
my number crosses over with this. So
I think that I would say that probably out of all of them, Drake and Josh might be my number one because it's just a really good live action show. But I think all that would probably be a good contender for number one as well. But Wild Thornberrys, it was a really good show. I mean, basically you have this girl who found a way to talk to animals, and it's kind of one of those things where it got interesting during the movie when basically she has to reveal the fact that she can talk to animals. And there's a part of me that thought about this morning. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, how come nobody really made it seem like, wow, this girl's crazy? But then I remembered, oh wait, she revealed that, and then there was that deal where the magic kind of went around her, and then she lost the power. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I can understand why nobody questioned that. If that really happened, it would be one of those things where I'm like, okay, I kind of believe that. I'm not going to lie. But basically like I said, this girl can talk to animals. It's fun. It can be adventurous. There's a lot of times where she has to battle with, everything that she has with the responsibility of doing this to help the animals. But it's kind of one of those things where it's really cool to see. I will say this, that there is a crossover that leaves me in questions, but I think that we'll save that for when we talk about, I think what is probably your number one. But there is a bit of a crossover deal where I'm just kind of scratching my head at the whole, because the whole story around it kind of was like, huh, what? I'm totally lost. But we'll get into that in just a bit. Wrapping up the final two, of course, they are live action. First one is one that I really enjoyed, especially when I was watching it in high school, and that was the show known as Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. Basically, this show is almost like a high school for dummies, basically. You're basically just having this kid show you, hey, you want to try and, work on a report? Well, find a subject matter. Find a way to make time for it. Battling things like procrastination, bullying, what to do in relationships, and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff that goes on there is really cool because he is trying to, help. And he's basically like Ryan Reynolds. He is basically breaking the fourth wall every now and then, where he's just looking straight into the camera, just saying like, "Oh, you might want to, handle this tip. You might want to handle this tip," and blah 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 blah. It's really funny, but it's also kind of one of those things where it's like it's kind of educational. It's kind of cool that you can see that, they're at least trying to do something where it's like, hey, if you're struggling with this, here's some ideas, and they go through like the step by step of what will help you. What will help it work out. And, a lot of the stories that happen in there, of course, Ned getting in trouble with, not getting homework done or battling stuff with relationships. I mean, I know that, he had a thing for Susie for a while, and then it seemed like he had a thing for Mose, and then they had the crisscross deal, and then he was with Susie, but then he realized that he kind of liked Mose, and then it wasn't until the movie came out that he ended up with Susie, and then Susie went with the bully who tried to win Mose or something. Okay, maybe I'm making this a little too complicated. But basically, the hot chick from Walking Dead? Yeah, she's in this series. Just bear that in mind. And literally, I'm watching Walking Dead, and I'm looking at this chick, I'm like, there's no way that's Susie Crabgrass from Ned's Declassified. I look it up with Wikipedia, I'm like, yep, it is. Oh, buddy, I'm enjoying the show already. But again, it's one of those shows where it's educational, it's fun, it has entertainment to it. It's just really cool seeing Ned, Mose, and Cookie just going on these crazy adventures. It's funny just to see these things. And you also learn some things to do and don't do when you're in school. So I definitely would recommend that, especially for people that are not exactly, learning through books or through notes. Just watch the series, kind of pick up what they're getting at, and then you could be like, oh, okay, that's where I'm struggling with. Now I know what to do for next time. It's a lot of fun.
Sweet. I don't remember the show as much. Once you said it and I Googled it, I'm like, oh, okay. I did watch that a few times. So it was definitely enjoyable, but I was like, what the hell? What's Ned's Declassified? I wouldn't have known it by name, but I do know it by their actors and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, I remember that.
Very, very much, yeah. Okay, so the final one that I have on my list is a actual game show that they did on Nickelodeon. I was trying to figure out what it was for a while, and then I had to look at some of the videos and look at stuff. It's like, okay, what goes on with these show? What's the name of it? It was a show called Figure It Out. So basically, it's just this kid coming onto the show, admitting that they have like a special talent, and there's this panel of celebrities, mainly people from Nickelodeon, but they also have special guest celebrities. I found out that some wrestlers that used to work in WCW, they used to be on the show, cameoing every now and then, and it was absolutely hilarious. I'm going to have to post that up on our Facebook fan page. But yeah, basically they're given like 3 rounds to figure out what the special talent is by guessing clues that are given to him, by giving questions that the recipient will have to answer yes or no. It's just a lot of fun. And one of the funniest things about this show was the fact that during like the second and third round, they always had like this secret slime code or word or something like that, where if somebody does something or says something, they would end up getting slimed. And one of the funniest things was, I think that basically it was a setup doomed to fail no matter what. Where it says the secret code is getting a no answer. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, this is just a basic setup for everybody to get slimed. So as soon as the last person gets slimed, the last person gets a no, they just get splashed on with slime. It's just absolutely funny. Of course, you see a lot of familiar characters. Amanda Bynes was involved. I'm trying to remember the kid, Danny something. But they always just have a lot of fun. There were a lot of people from all that came onto it. It was there for a time being, and then it had a nice little resurgence in like 2011 to 2013, I believe it was. Bummed that I didn't get a chance to see that, but it's still one of those fun game shows that I think that if they would have had, better prizes for, because I remember back in the 90s, one of the main prizes that they usually had was like, oh, hey, you get an exclusive deal to Skechers. You get this deal. You get this deal. It's like, well, these prizes are not exactly that good. But then again, in the 90s, we didn't have much, so that was still a lot. But I assume, like, on the...
We had stuff, but just not as cool as we think they are now.
Yeah.
Or they were cooler then.
Yeah, that's a fair way to point.
K-Swiss was a thing, man. It was.
That is fair.
We got that.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. But yeah, Figure It Out was just a lot of fun to watch and just to wait for somebody to just get slimed. And there's always that one character in there, or one celebrity panel who's just like, oh, bring it on, I'll get slimed, whatever. There's literally a video of him just saying like, I'm expecting more, give it to me. You just hear the da-da-da-da. He's getting slimed all over again. It's like, man, you're just provoking the gods of slime, aren't you? It's like, yep, alright, this guy's cool.
Awesome. Well, I have to throw in now a couple of things we didn't talk about that I just want to mention that they're amazing, because we kind of just rallied together real quick about what our choices were.
Right.
Didn't know what your choices were, so I didn't want to take all the ones that were great and not leave you with any cartoons that you liked too. So I do have to mention Hey Arnold is freaking amazing. Love that show to death. Hey Arnold, and talk about a weird bully who is obsessed with a football head. Literally making a statue of gum about him. And then another one that I just have to throw out there is Doug. Because Doug has to be mentioned because of how, ingrained his theme song is to all of, our heads. Do 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 do. You're just like, oh my god, it's Doug. Doug's on. Even though Doug, for me, I wasn't ever, super into it, it just lasted, throughout time, and people still are like, oh my god, Doug, Skeeter, Patty, they're the weirdest characters, weirdest skin tones, but all really fun. So those were just honorable mentions I had to throw out there.
Sure. I do have, one funny story. I do apologize for interrupting. There actually is a bit of a funny story that I wanted to mention. It actually involves a time that me and my family went down to Disney World. They actually had this stage performance of Doug that was going on
at Disney World.
Yeah, so this is years ago. I'm talking probably maybe 90s, early 2000s. I want to say, I can't remember exactly when. It was probably it was late 90s, early 2000s, I should say. Yeah, they had this, and actually they had all these volunteers go up on stage to quote unquote audition for certain parts of the stage performance. Well, fortunately, my dad actually got to be one of those people that went out and volunteered, and he actually got one of the parts in the production. He got all dressed up, he was all in makeup, and he was actually the I can't remember the band that was that was kind of their Beatles or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was actually the drummer when they were doing the performance. So I legitimately thought to myself, oh, that was so cool. And when I would go over to the high school that he worked at, he would always have that picture of basically a copy picture of the band. And they would have all the autographs of, this person played this played this, and now it's like, oh, there's my dad. My dad played this character. This was so cool. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, this is kind of like the only cool thing I can relate to when it comes to...
Wasn't it Universal Studios?
Was it Oh, wait, maybe it was Universal Studios.
Like, when you said Disney, I'm like, no way. Like, they wouldn't have Doug. But it probably was Universal Studios, because Nickelodeon was owned by them.
Maybe it was Universal Studios. But I was thinking, like, I think that the way I saw it as a kid, maybe I still see it as now, like, Disney World, I combine, the whole...
Wait. It's saying Disney's Doug. Was Doug not on Nickelodeon?
There was a while where Disney owned Doug, but...
You know what? Yeah, it started... So you're probably not wrong, so I apologize for that, because I'm like, Doug is on Nickelodeon, but maybe it was dropped. Yeah, it says, from Nickelodeon to the Disney Channel, and then it says ruined.
I think that's accurate. I got to remember that.
That's hilarious, but yeah, I guess it was... like, Doug started in 1991, so that's an older cartoon. That's another reason why probably it wasn't on here. We both were a little young when it was popular. But yeah, I guess moved to the Disney Channel in the late 90s, so that's probably why they were performing stuff. And then it says, ruined.
Well then.
Right? Like, oh, geez, okay.
Speaking of...
Really cool about your dad getting to, like, perform as one of them. That's fun.
That was amazing. Well, speaking of... Okay, I wouldn't say ruined, but maybe. We'll see. What is your number one pick for, quote-unquote, best Nickelodeon TV show or cartoon? What have you got?
All right, my number one pick, and then I do have to say one last, hashtag love you to one of the cartoons that I didn't even want to put this in the category of these older, nice, cool cartoons. But my number one, it has to be Rugrats. Like, Rugrats was my shit, like, growing up. And it aired when I was a bubba, 1991. It's actually older than me. And the final episode of Rugrats was in 2004, so that's one a long stint. And along the way, we meet Tommy Pickles, Phil and Lil, Chucky, Angelica, Susie. Chucky's dad gets married, and we have a new, what's her name? Kiki?
Oh, Kiki, yes.
Is it Kiki?
I think so.
And then Tommy gets a younger brother. Like, there's just so much that happens throughout this baby life that we follow. And it's so cool. Like, the first movie is when Tommy gets
Dill, yeah.
Brother. He's so nervous. Yeah, and then they go to Paris, and that's when Chucky's dad remarries, and Chucky gets a stepsister. So many, like, great themes that, like, when you're growing up, you're like, huh. Like, you don't notice it, but, like, when I look back, I'm like, holy cow. They covered a lot. And, like, got you through things. And I loved Rugrats. And then they did the, like, spin-off, which I just kind of lump them together, really, of All Grown Up. That started in 2003. So basically when Rugrats was ending, they started All Grown Up, and that lasted till 2008. And All Grown Up literally showed the kids as teenagers or preteens in general, preteens. And it kind of allowed the kids who started with Rugrats to be at their preteen age, and then they were like, okay, now we're going to do the people who love Rugrats the most. We're going to put it in their time, their, like, age group, and it was just perfect. I couldn't believe how cool it was. I didn't like it as much as I liked the baby stuff, because obviously it was more real. Like, we didn't get those imagination adventures of them, like, fighting, like, dinosaurs and stuff, and Tommy Pickles doing anything with a screwdriver, kind of like a Doctor Who type of character. But but yeah, it was just really cool, and everybody grew up. Like, some people got braces, and there's love, and there's school drama. It was just really awesome, and I just all around love Rugrats. I don't think they did anything wrong, and I loved everything they did. I even loved the Rugrats Go Wild with the Wild Thornberrys. That to me was awesome, because you got to see the connection with the like other kids and stuff, and I was like, I didn't even know they had the same animators. They did not look that similar to me. But super cool. Always and forever will be a fan of Rugrats.
Rugrats is definitely one of the anchor points as well as the cornerstones when it comes to Nickelodeon's success. You definitely do hit the nail on the head when it comes to that. They kind of lost me when they did All Grown Up. I think that, like you said, there's so much more interest in them having the... I think that's basically what Rugrats is all about. It was all about, being young, but also just captivating the imagination. I mean, I remember an episode where they literally are playing with a cardboard box. One thinks it's a race car, one thinks it's a spaceship. Phil and Lil think it's like a cave in a house, but it turns out to be both of them, apparently. Then the box gets torn up, and they just continue just creating all of these great ideas. It's just a lot of fun what they end up doing. And, last week when we talked about it with our Halloween episode, just the crazy stuff that they end up doing, all the crazy, wacky adventures, and how a lot of times they just really never showed too much in the way of fear, unless there was actually something legitimately to be afraid of, which usually that was always Chucky all the time. But Phil and Lil were always kind of just, they were kind of like the followers, and Chucky was kind of like the far behind one, just waiting for something bad to happen, and kind of having that deal where he's just like, see, I told you so, but Tommy was always that one just leading on. And of course you had the bully and Angelica, who just, wow. You talk about how tough love and with family. She definitely embodied that when it came to just the kids, as well as just picking on her cousin Tommy. Just, wow. And there's always those times where you just see Karma just get her back so badly, and it's kind of one of those things where you kind of feel bad for her at certain points, but then you also feel like she deserves it.
Yeah, I just know, like, when I have rewatched some of Rugrats just to do it and see if it still holds up, and I just remember the Mother's Day episode, and it was like I started like tearing up. I was like, oh God, oh my gosh, it's so sad. It was so good. And it was so well written, and I'm like, as an adult, I can appreciate that. So I think that was the cool thing that Nickelodeon always tried to do, to me, a little bit better than Cartoon Network. I don't think better than Disney, but I do think they did it better than Cartoon Network, of having these, like, if you're watching this and your parent has to be in the room watching with you, they're not unentertained. I think Cartoon Network had a little more simplistic storylines. I mean, Ed and Eddie, like, let's get those jawbreakers. And it was, it's fun, but it's, like, stupid. Where, like, Rugrats would have, like, oh, your mom died and you don't have a mom on Mother's Day. You're like, holy shit, this is so much deeper. But, it was just good altogether. I just really loved it. And my shout out was going to be to Avatar and like Korra, all the anime crossovers of Nickelodeon, which I didn't include it because I don't feel like it's the basis of Nickelodeon, but I do really enjoy them reaching out to like anime and bringing them in. I think that's awesome, and I love all the crossovers that Nickelodeon has done with the anime community.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. I know that they definitely have been trying a lot of other things, like trying to really just get involved and trying to basically just say, like, hey, we know that you like this. Like, you like the penguins of Madagascar, we're going to turn that into a series. Or, oh, you like the turtles? We'll bring them to that. You like the Power Rangers? Hey, we're going to do that. They are trying their hardest to, still be relevant, but not like in the kind of, what's the phrase I'm looking for? They're not pandering as much. Like, mentioning before with, certain shows back in the day, I think there were some that did pander more to either a younger audiences or some to an older audience. But I think that right now they're trying to make it so that, like everybody's happy. So at least I can admire them for that. it's going to be interesting to see where Nickelodeon goes like 10 years from now. We're literally probably going to be looking back on it and thinking, wow, we were just recently talking about some of the great stories and great, series that we were talking about. And now it's just interesting seeing where they kind of come from there. But again, guys, if we missed any of your favorite TV shows from Nickelodeon, be sure to just leave it in the comments, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Spreaker.com, whether it's on YouTube. Either way, guys, we would love to know what you guys thought. Nickelodeon definitely does a great job of creating a lot of great television shows, whether it's live action or cartoons. So with that being said, that'll wrap it up for this edition of The Game Changer. So, obviously, you guys, this is the month of November. We are almost done with the new year. A lot of great stuff coming up, including for wrestling fans, we have Survivor Series coming up in just 2 weeks now. It's insane. They've only announced one matchup so far, but it's already a good matchup. Trust me, if you haven't seen it, go watch Raw and you'll see what matchup that is. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm not going to mention the event that's happening tomorrow because, no, just no. But with that being said, again, just thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk to you guys next week. VicTori Belle, do you have anything crazy going on over the next, or even like in the next month for November?
Not really. Nothing that I can for sure talk about and stuff, but I'm still just, trucking along, doing my thing, hopefully getting more auditions and getting in some more commercial stuff. So I think that'll be really great, and we'll see where it goes. When I have stuff released, I could definitely send it out to you guys and let you know about it, obviously. But as of right now, it's still nothing too new and special.
All right. Well, suppose that people want to see more of stuff that you've done in the past. Where can people find that kind of stuff?
They can go to my Facebook or my Instagram. My Instagram's still my cosplay name, so at VictoriBelleCosplay. And then, Facebook is Tori Clark / VicTori Belle. And Victory is spelled like Victoria without the A.
Well, there you go. And ladies and gentlemen, you can also find me on Twitter at RealFNGame. You can give us a like on our Facebook fan page, facebook.com/changing up the game. So for VicTori Belle, I've been Nate the Effing Great. Thank you so much for joining us here. November is here, and it's going to be absolutely glorious. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.